This is the Recruit the Employer podcast, and you're listening to episode 90, How to Prepare for a Final Round Interview. Welcome to the Recruit the Employer podcast, a show for the ambitious, action-oriented career woman who wants to live out her purpose, rise to the top of her industry, and be seen as a leader at work. In 30 minutes or less, we'll walk you through the latest strategies to land your dream job, blast through imposter syndrome, and make the money you deserve. I'm your host, Jena ex-Wall Streeter turned career coach and founder of Recruit the Employer. But more importantly, I'm on a mission to help you fall in love with your work again. So grab a glass of wine, get ready to be coached, and tune in to your weekly boost of career confidence. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Recruit the Employer. Today's conversation is really an on-air coaching call, and you're going to hear me coach one of the clients in the Recruit the Employer program through what it looks like to prepare for a final round interview and actually like a second round interview. And we have an amazing update for this client where after doing this kind of on-air coaching, this coaching and implementing all the things that she learned in Recruit the Employer, she actually landed the job and was able to negotiate more money and more time off. And so just wanted to provide that little update that this type, you really want to listen. If you are struggling with interviewing, if you cannot close the sale, she was able to implement all the strategies that we use. It boosted her confidence. She was able to articulate better the value that she could bring to the table. And I'm just so happy for her. And congratulations to you, Emily, for if you're listening to this podcast episode, hopefully you'll listen to yourself. Just congratulations on your new job. We're so proud of you and happy to have you in the Recruit the Employer team. So without further ado, here's my on-air coaching call with Emily. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Recruit the Employer. I am here with Emily, and we are going to be walking through today. You're going to listen to an on-air coaching call, basically. And so Emily has a couple of interviews coming up. So Emily, thanks so much for being here today. You and I are just going to have coaching after this little intro. You and I are just going to be coaching like it's just one-on-one coaching. But I love that you're offering to kind of give an inside look of, one, what it looks like to be coached, but two, just to show your experience of preparing for an interview. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. And these interviews keep popping up. So let's do it.
This is some good stuff. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about, you have 2 interviews coming up. So what are these 2 interviews and what is the big thing that you feel like is a little bit overwhelming right now?
So the first one coming up is a product management job in data solutions. And I know I can do it because I'm a quick learner, but it's building an API for this company. And the biggest thing is I don't have direct experience in that yet. So I'm looking at how to kind of sell myself to the individual there, the hiring manager, because, I want him to feel like he could trust me with this, even though I don't have necessarily like coding experience, which, is a thing, or direct experience building this type of product right now. But I'm pretty confident I could do it. And I understand what they are. So, that's a good thing. And then the second one is a final round. I've already met the hiring manager, gone through everything else, and sent a pitch for a product feature upgrade. And now I have to pitch it, like actually pitch it. So they want me to walk through the sales pitch and then go through the gambit of meeting like a bunch of people on the team. And that part is intimidating to me because it's going to be like 2 hours. So it's how do I, make sure I can sell myself to all of those people for the second one and keep my energy up, I guess, if you have any tips for that. So both of them a little different, but still kind of the same thing. And either way, these are the people making decisions and I need to make them happy because I like it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So what we're going to talk through, so you basically have 2 interviews. You have a first round interview, correct? Is that
second round interview for the one, the first
and then
one.
A final round interview for the other one.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk through the final round one, because I think there's more to unpack there. And I think it'll help inform how we talk about the first one. So when it comes to being in a panel interview, and this is an area where you can probably take notes. And if you're listening, this is probably relevant to anybody, but when you are in some sort of panel, do you know how many people you're going to be meeting with?
No.
Okay. So typically when you get to a final round interview, it's usually to see if you're a good culture fit. Honestly, they've kind of vetted you enough to know, okay, this person has the skills, they have the capabilities. Are they going to be good for our team? And let's double check to make sure that they can do the work that we want them to do. So talk to me a little bit about, you don't know who necessarily you're going to be meeting with. Have they not told you?
No.
Okay. So I would recommend for sure reaching out to whoever your contact is and asking for a list of those individuals. You absolutely need to know who you're going to be walking into, because who you're going to be talking with and how you're going to be talking to them and what you're going to be talking about, I think there's a difference between each different type of person. So like if you're talking to somebody who's going to be, I'm just giving an example, a direct report, you're going to talk to them a little differently because their needs are different than if it's somebody who's your peer or somebody who's in a different department that you'd be working alongside versus somebody who is a senior level executive, right? All those different players, the way to keep your energy up is to know what to expect. That's the first thing. So I want you to, one, ask the recruiter or whoever your contact is at that organization, who are the people I would love to prepare in advance? That's how you write the email. I would love to prepare in advance and just make sure that I just have an idea of who I'm going to be meeting with and how many people. Just want to make sure that I show up as the best version of myself. Mm-hmm. So that would be the first thing. And then who have you met with thus far at the organization?
2 recruiters and the hiring manager. To my knowledge, it will be like team members or directors across, like different directors from what I remember, but I'd have to get the direct.
And it's a product manager role, correct? Yeah. Okay. So what is the main, when we're looking at this job description, so this is for everybody. If you have a job that you are preparing an interview for, you absolutely need to read that job description a zillion times over. Her and I were kind of chatting before this call, and I said, because jobs, especially in these kind of technology roles, they sometimes go away. they go into the ethosphere somewhere. So whenever you find a job that you start interviewing for, screenshot that job description in case it goes down for whatever reason, so that you can always have that to refer to. So I would definitely recommend doing that. Now with this job description, talk to me a little bit about let's go to the basics. What is the main idea of this role? Like, why are they hiring for a product manager?
Yeah. So in general, product managers, they're kind of the communication specialists in a way. They connect everybody across an organization. But you also need a bit of tech knowledge and the ability to translate. How did I explain it the other day? Like literally speak tech. So it's tech to the business and speaking business to the tech team, which is always important, as well as different like planning requirements and a bit of knowledge about Agile and Scrum methodology, depending where you're working. So that's kind of the general thing. But what this job wants is someone to come in and really help with, they're trying to convert their website over to something that is readable for disabilities because it's a requirement legally. So
we actually had a client who did that for a living. Like that was her. Oh, awesome. She sold that system that did that. So it's interesting. Sorry, keep going.
No, it's okay. That's so fun. Yeah. So they're looking for someone to lead that for 6 months and then progress up the ladder basically into a product management role. So they're going to kind of train you up for 6 months doing that project and then continue depending on what you're interested in.
So let's talk through why do you think that you should get this job? Let's just talk through just like you and me, not like a planned answer. Why do you think that you would be a good fit for the role?
Well, I really, in general, I'm a big like data-driven product management person. And the cool thing about this organization is that they work with a lot of streaming data coming in. So I'm really excited about the opportunity itself, especially with where they can go. But that being said, I really am ready for a new challenge. So I'm ready to kind of take that on. And they're in a growth stage where they're moving just from one type of thing, which is reporting on different events, to betting, which is really cool. So that will be a really interesting place to be when they can roll that out in my country. And I'm really, really excited to get in on that. And the world's changing, man. Like data and AI and machine learning and really understanding your consumer is so important. So bringing those two things together is something I like to talk about. I like to write about it. I'm really passionate about it. And I'm ready to level up. So that's kind of why I'm interested in it in particular.
So that's great. Why I'm all for all of those things. Talk to me. So when we're looking at interviewing, right, and we're looking at understanding why companies should hire us, I love all those answers of why you're interested. I want to know why you're the right person for the role. And this is what I think we need to be thinking about more specifically, because it is easy to be like, why are you a good fit for the role, to why do I want the role? When the reality, it's your job to think through what does the employer care about? And that's why I asked, like, I know the definition of product management, but what does this job, what do they need that person to be able to accomplish? What goals are they looking for? Because once you figure out that information, it's really easy to go into those interviews and say, let's say, for instance, you're talking to somebody that's in a different team that you would be working alongside. And they ask you, like, why should we hire you for this role? You could literally say, if you're looking for somebody to be able to speak the tech to you so that at the same time, be able to translate that to the business side of things. If you want somebody that's able to do both of those things, I'm going to help you make that process seamless. Like, I'm going to be your advocate in this process. Like, that's the way to be thinking about it. It's not like, well, I've done this before. You can say that, right? I've done this before, and that could be bolster up, but you need to go in with the confidence that you've talked about to me already of like, yeah, I know I can do that. You need to go in with your answer of like, I know what they need. I'm going to share with them that I understand what their needs are. I'm going to help them reach their goals. Because if you're helping other people reach their goals, you're going to make them like you. Just period, right? You're helping people reach their goals, right? So a manager is going to want to know, are you going to make my life easier? Are you going to be able to hit the ground running? Am I not going to have to spend a lot of time training you? Like, those are all things that you want to be thinking about. What is the manager thinking about? What do they care about? And that's how my answer should be portrayed. And it's not, I don't encourage lying. It's not about like fitting it to fit your narrative. It's thinking of your experience and understanding who you're speaking to and being able to translate in that more effective way. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What questions do you have around that?
So when it's something, I don't know how to explain this, when it's something like these types of roles where they're changing all the time and they're sort of vague.
Yeah, because a lot of job descriptions are vague.
Yeah. How would you kind of go about, do you bring in a direct example of something you've done in the past, or do you try to blanket over it?
Do you mean when you're asked the question, like, why should we hire you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could literally, I would always start off with anchoring it to a confidence statement. So if you're looking for somebody that is able to do, I'll give you an example. When I was going into sales, they asked me, why should we hire you for this role? I had no experience. I was coming from finance. I never even had like a retail job. I had zero traditional sales experience. So what I said was, if you're looking for somebody to hit the ground running, that's going to be able to relate to the head of talent acquisitions, these senior leaders at corporations, I'm going to be the girl for the job. I have experience working with senior leaders in the past. I have experience in really high pressure environments. I worked on Wall Street in various ways. So if you're looking for someone that can handle all of that, I'm going to be the girl for the job. That is how he answered the question. And I think that's why they hired me. So for you, it's very similar, right? So if you're looking for somebody and you have to pinpoint what is that one main thing, right? And then support that with an example. You could give a very specific example, like, hey, I worked on this project and this is the result we were able to produce. So do you have something like that you can share?
Yeah. So, man, I'm like so bad at talking about myself.
That's okay. This is why we do this. We have to practice. Yes. It's so important to practice it.
Yeah. So if we were talking about this job in particular, I'd say if you're looking for somebody who loves data as much as they empathize with people, then I'm the right person for the job. So in the past, I've worked in a lot of organizations that need to make data-driven decisions, but they need to make them with the user top of mind. And that's what I'm really, really great at. In particular, I worked in education tech, and we had to look at how to change our entire portfolio to fit some new regulations. And one of the things I was constantly doing was checking in with my team and asking how the students were feeling about what they were learning, but then taking a lot of the data out there that said, we really need to be pushing towards more machine learning and AI, and seeing how we could bring those really difficult topics to fruition without stressing the students out too much. So keeping those things both balanced.
I love it. That's awesome. That is great. But doesn't it help to have that anchor at the beginning instead of just launching into, oh, well, I can do all these different things. And you don't have a structured, it's typically how we do it, right? We don't have a structured answer, and structure Structure is kindness to ourselves. Bringing structure to an answer is kind to the person who's listening to you. Nobody wants to listen to somebody ramble. I mean, sometimes we do, but for the most part, if we're in an interview, we want it to be short, sweet, to the point. We want to know how that person's going to bring us value. And we want to know that we can relate to one another, right? We want to know, does this feel good? And also, are they going to be able to get the job done? That's what an employer is asking. So you anchoring it with that confidence, because that's one of the things you talked about. How do I show confidence in something? in the interview. Is that something you struggle with a lot or a lot of people do. So you're not alone.
Yeah. It's funny. Like the second there's any sort of, it's an interview, I get very nervous. The same with like tests in university, like it was always the same thing.
I hated standardized tests. I was not very good at them.
If we were like chatting about my job, like right now, like it was just a riff off, like I'd probably be a totally different person. So it's
what goes on in your brain? Like when you go into an interview, like what changes for you? Yeah. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. And that's like a very existential question.
I know, but you have to go there.
Yeah, no, I haven't thought about it in that way. I think it's just like, if I think about school with tests, it was like, I have to like demonstrate this value. And I'm like, I'm not ready. Like, what if I'm not ready? And I know I have all of those tools because I've been doing jobs and getting paid for them, or I've been studying and I know this stuff. But the second it's performance time, my brain just switches into like run mode. It's like, no, bye. So maybe I'm guessing that it kind of equates itself to like back at school where it's like, you have to perform and you have to be judged and I don't like it.
Yeah.
You know?
I totally understand that. Our gremlins come out to play right before an interview. We start telling ourselves, well, maybe I shouldn't be here. And then we say, well, maybe I'm going to have to perform. So I have to be perfect. And I have to say exactly what they want me to say instead of actually answering authentically. And so when I'm talking about, even in this instance where I'm saying, think about what they're thinking, I don't want you to think about like, do they like me or not? That's not what I'm talking about here. We're talking about, let's get behind the psychology of the person that you're speaking to. Because if you understand their needs, you understand what part of your experience is going to be most relevant to them. And so you highlight those things. And so for you, before you go into your interview tomorrow, and I know you have one later today, actually, as we're recording this, do you do any meditation or centering at all?
Yeah, I'm a big spirit junkie.
Okay. So my recommendation is to set aside, don't be cramming before an interview. This is like when we were in college or something and people who would like cram to the last minute of the test. Like, don't be that person. This is not the time. Your job is to center yourself as much as possible. I will send you over, you're in Recruit the Employer. And so you actually have access to all of the recordings of what to listen to before the interview to calm yourself, and then what to listen to after the interview. And so I would listen to both of those recordings because I think it's going to help you from that centering standpoint. And the other thing you have to remember is that you are good at what you do. Like, you just need to tell yourself that before you go into an interview, because the gremlins will come out in your interview as you're answering a question and they're going to say to your brain, I don't know about that. I don't know. You might not be good enough for that. They don't like you. I can tell by the like subconscious, right? We're all in our head instead of in our bodies. And I want you to be more in your body than you are in your head.
Yeah, totally true. It's so funny. My spirituality coach says that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's been talking about that a lot lately. She's like, man, we're all just like up in the ethos and we got to like come on down, and into our bodies and like feel, because she was talking about like integrating the feelings you want to feel. So, I'm sure about affirmations and whatnot. She's like, so we say them and we say them and we say them, but if you don't feel it in your body, then it's not going to stick. So I think that's really funny because it's a very similar idea.
You have to believe it. Like you can say it. Like, I'm all for saying things and speaking things. And I think words matter. But if you're just saying them and they're not actually tethering themselves to you, then you're not going to actually operate from that. Right. So if you don't actually believe those things, then it doesn't matter. You could say it all the time. That's why I do think the mindset shifting and actually the shift really matters, and anchoring that shift, because we've talked about this before, but 50% of the interview is your confidence level and 50% is what you talk about. And they're directly connected, right?
Yeah. I think I listened to, it was a couple of weeks ago now. So these interviews have been obviously with the holidays dragged out a bit.
Yes.
But also just in general, product management gets dragged out because you're such a strange addition to the team, right? Like, you have to have all these skills. So, but I'm pretty sure I listened to the pump up and the talk down after the hiring manager meeting for the second interview I have. So I feel like it helped. I'm trying to remember, but I feel like I did.
Yeah, good. It's supposed to.
I was going to say, but I feel like I did listen to it, at least for that. So that's funny that it worked. But I'm going to have to do it again because the one coming up is definitely a bit outside of my comfort zone in terms of the actual tech. But I know I can do it. I mean, shoot, I got deployed into managing a data science portfolio, and I I have no background in data science.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Hi there, friends. Jena here again. Let me guess. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not looking for any job. You're looking for the right job. And the right job is not at your current company. You're tired of feeling underpaid, overworked, and like your career is in the hands of the employer. You're ready to make some moves, but you're overwhelmed by all of the options, don't know how to sell yourself, and have a nagging feeling that your lack of confidence is keeping you from success. Not to mention negotiating the amount you're worth. If this sounds like you and you're a mid to senior level career woman who makes over $100,000, we have the 5-step solution just for you. Our signature program, Recruit the Employer, is designed to help women leaders get clarity on what they want to do, market to their dream jobs, and negotiate thousands more. Using a personal branded approach, we equip you with the tools to sell yourself in a non-sleazy way, think like a C-suite leader, and ultimately take back control of your career. To apply, head on over to recruittheemployer.com/call. Over the course of 6 months, you'll network with other female leaders at similar stages, learn how to double your salary, and solidify your career story. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, that dreaded resume and LinkedIn profile, yeah, we do that for you. Because of the intimate nature of this program and limited spots, we're really very selective about who we invite into the program. To see if you'd be a good fit, again, head on over to recruittheemployer.com/call to apply today. So we've kind of covered the one for tomorrow, and we've talked through kind of ways to be, number one, you have to figure out who you're going to be in the room with. Two, to think about what their needs are. And I would journal right through that, like write about it. Okay, what are their needs? What are the things that what are their goals? And what is the main goal of this role? If I'm able, I need to communicate that throughout every single interview that I do. Right? If you want, if it's somebody who's your peer, like if you're looking for somebody to be a part of the team that's going to help breed a positive culture, that's going to want to build long-lasting relationships amongst the team, I'm going to be able to do that for you guys. I've done it in the past. I look forward to helping you guys in the future. Right? You at the end of the day are the asset coming in to help. They are the opportunity. And that's oftentimes where we get mixed up in our brains, where we're like, well, I need to like beg, grovel, and like show them and perform, kind of what you were talking about. But at the end of the day, if you really believe that you have what it takes and you can do it, you are actually the asset, and they should be not groveling towards you. We don't like that, but they should be recognizing that, right? And if they're not, it just might not be a good fit if you can authentically go in as yourself.
Yeah. I think I have a what was I saying to my fiance? A banking PTSD.
Okay. Tell me about that. I relate to that phrase.
Yeah, I was going to say, you worked on Wall Street, so you probably could have this in spades in comparison to what I've had. But, so for context, my degree is in finance and business valuation, while my master's is. Yeah, so part of my master's was rotations, and you'd rotate every 4 months, and some of that was in banking. So I worked in valuations and corporate banking for 2 of my rotations, and just the interview style, I'm sure you can imagine. Yeah. It's very like investment banking style, right? Yep. So grilling you on various ratios where you're like, I could Google this.
Yeah. Why do I need to like tell you this right now?
Yeah. I hate admitting this, but someone told me if I had bigger boobs, I'd get the job. Like, I still think I have.
Who said that? Oh, I don't even want. We can talk about that offline. That's disgusting.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah, but it's just things like that, or they're going, they're grilling you for these internship positions where you're going, I don't know what, Canadian to Mexican, like the exchange rate is today, because shoot, it is 9 a.m. and I haven't even had my coffee. Yeah. But I swear to God, if you gave me my phone, I could tell you in 2 minutes.
Right. Like, is that really helpful?
Yeah. So I think I get a little bit anxious like that because of the style of interview I was so used to for so long in a way, right? Like, where it's like, I have no experience, but you're treating me like I should have all of the experience. And I know I'm at a different stage in my career now, but that was definitely one of the things that stuck with me, was like this like need to be perfect, because in the banking world, in these like extremely competitive roles, in these high pressure quote unquote roles, they need you to be perfect, or at least that's the attitude a lot of them have. I think it's shifted since. I think it has shifted. But it definitely was something that, being young and impressionable and a student, you carry with you, right? Sure. When you're going through that, and when your career center knows that that's the standard, and that's what they have to coach you through. Like, it's tough. And I think sometimes that comes to bite me a little bit where I like freeze up and I'm like, oh man, I have to be able to like, list out the types of APIs right now. Oh, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would say too, one of the things that I have found when, I've actually gone through an interview. I was potentially going to be working with a company last year. And I went recently through an interview process, which is kind of funny, but a lot of people don't know that. And you have to go into those things with a hands up approach. Like you have to enter into interviews where if it's not this one, it will be the next one. We get into such a scarcity mindset where we think this is the last one. If I don't get this one, I will never get a job ever again. And like, you're like, oh, Jen, I don't actually say that, but you probably do subconsciously. Like your body is telling you that you're kind of saying that, right? And so we go into an interview like it's do or die, and we don't perform at our best because we're not at ease. When we are at ease and we're actually the ones where you're like, if I get it, cool. If I don't get it, those are the ones you do the best at, right? Right. It's kind of like dating. Like for me, anytime I was like, oh, I really like this guy. Oh my gosh. I would get like so tensed up and I wouldn't act like myself because I was so nervous. When I met my husband, I was like, if this guy doesn't like me, I mean, it is what it is. I'm coming in yoga pants and now we're married. Right. So like, I think that analogy still holds true with the job process and interviewing as well. So I just want to encourage you with that if you go in with a hands up approach, I know it's hard, but to really train yourself to do that, because I totally understand that investment banking PTSD interview. I get it. Let's talk about the one that you have later today. So you already know, which is beautiful. I think this is really helpful too, to understand what the objections are going to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes we want to avoid the objections, or like we think about them like, oh my gosh, they're going to probably not like this, but we don't actually play the tape through of how we're going to answer it and overcome it. So I actually recommend that for every interview, even this one that you have tomorrow, to start writing out like what could their potential objections be, and clearly defining those, because that's going to help you overcome it, right? Like we have to talk about the elephant in the room sometimes, right?
Oh, for sure.
So for you and for this interview that you have later today, talk to us a little bit and talk to me a little bit about where you're worried that they may not want to move forward with you because of.
Right. So what I did have, which is a nice advantage, was that it was an external recruiter that like kind of partners with the organization that they use. And she's really, really nice. And I was just like, what's the deal? Like, what can I make sure, to work on? This straight up answer is I don't have direct experience building an API. And they're freaked out about that. And I understand, but I honestly don't think it's a problem. Personally, for me, product management is a role that can span industries, and you should be able to pick yourself up and plop yourself down in another industry and like get up to speed really quickly. And that's something I've proven that I can do. So I've worked across multiple industries, like obviously banking.
Sure.
And then my first role out of my MBA was actually a product manager role, managing an education data science portfolio. So I had no idea. I didn't even know that product management was a job, let alone that people needed education in data science, machine learning, all of these things. And I was able to get up to speed pretty quick. And we built a couple courses within 2 months that like skyrocketed. So I really can just sit down and go, yeah, okay, I can build this. Like, this is no big deal. Just give me a minute to read about it and then we're good to go. And it was the same thing with my prior role before COVID hit, completely different industry, food services, but as a product manager. And shoot, I haven't flipped burgers since I was 15, but I was able to sit down, really understand, within 2 weeks, we had built a really interesting analysis on what all of our competitors were doing. And like, I built that, right? And then I ended up using our pricing strategy, which was kind of wild because we had one idea. Turns out all the competitors that we were looking at were doing something else. And when we changed it, we got some bigger accounts. So
yeah,
I feel that just because I don't have this direct experience doesn't mean I can't do it. I'm a quick study, quick learner. And most importantly, I'm super passionate about data in general. So unlike people who have done these things, and sometimes maybe are a bit stagnant, I'm always going to be really excited about it. So I'm going to want to learn it anyway. And I'm up to speed. So
here's what I think. Here's what I'm thinking. Everything that you're saying. So when you go into an interview, with them, they're going to ask the question. So you don't have API experience. Can you talk to me a little bit about why you think you're a good fit for this role? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to structure the things that you just talked about. I want you to come to the table and say, totally understand. I understand that concern. Here's what I can tell you. I can tell you that I have experience. My personal philosophy on product management is, and you say exactly what you just said, right? My personal philosophy is that we should be able to pick ourselves up, move ourselves over to a different industry, and it should be seamless. And so I have done this multiple times over, and I say, I have 3 examples to share with you and make them short and quick. And the whole key with that is, again, bringing structure to your answers. You've got the data. And if they don't want that, if they're like, no, we actually really need somebody with that experience because they think that's what they need, then you can't do anything to change their mind on that, right?
Yeah.
All you can do is you can go into there and equip yourself to present the best pitch. It's essentially what you're doing. The best pitch as to why you believe that you could still do the job, even if you don't have that experience. Right. And it's walking when you don't have experience and you have a gap in your resume of something that they clearly want. You need to help affirm them because their biggest fear is that you're going to get into the job and you're not going to be able to perform and they're not going to be able to hit their goals, right? Well, let's play the tape through. So you need to be thinking through, okay, how do I not only just convince them it's potentially not a big deal, but how do I show them my plan for putting it into action of what I would do? Right. Yeah. So that is a big part of it, is helping somebody understand your thought process of why or what you would actually do to make that happen. So I'll give you an example. Again, back to my sales example that I was talking about earlier. They said, how would you build out a territory? I said, truthfully, I've never done that. I didn't lie. Right. Truthfully, I've never done that. Here's how I would approach it. I would do step 1, step 2, step 3. That's how I would do it. Now, obviously, that will probably change once I get into the job and dig in a little bit deeper, but that would be my thought process of how I would make that happen.
That makes sense.
So it's you coming in almost with like a case study of like, this is like, you gave me a problem. Here's my solution to that. This is how I would think it through. It's to show your thinking, show that you're proactive with it, and show that you understand the concern, but this is how you would work around it. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm lucky in the sense that I have at least built some products. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
Right.
And, you just get to know the user really well. And in this case, it might be developers, or it could, in the end, I think they might be exposing the data to the public. So then, you'd want to kind of get up to speed with that. But in terms of like the technicals, I know how to speak about them. So that part, I think we've got covered, and I just got to get to know people really quick. And then we move forward on what they need that suits them best. And that's what I like doing anyway. I like solving big puzzles. Makes me happy.
Yeah. And I would say when you're thinking about transferable skills, it's all about what are their needs and where do I actually have it over here, but it's spelled differently, basically, right? They spell it this way. I spell it this way. It's the same thing. I need to connect the dots for them. You cannot expect, this is for everybody. You cannot expect an employer to connect the dots. You must connect the dots for the employer. That's how you are successful in the interview process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love what you have said there. I think you've added a lot to that, right? You've shown, okay, this is my like 4 reasons, basically. Here is this on a silver platter of why that doesn't matter. And also here is my step-by-step process of what, and I would say like, this is my methodology that I use anytime I enter into a new role. My first step is always to be connecting with the right people, start building relationships ASAP. The second thing is going to be researching API. Right? The third thing is going to be building out a plan. The fourth thing is going to be this, right? You come to the table with that, it's going to impress them. They're going to be like, oh, she's done this before. She has a methodology, right? Yeah. Everybody in their job has a methodology. When I'm working with clients, I talk to them like when they get to the interview stage, you have a methodology that you use probably from job to job or project to project. You name it, you sound more impressive. Name your methodology, right? So Recruit the Employer, the methodology I created, other career coaches use similar kind of steps or whatever, but I coined it. And the reason why was because it helps people understand it better. It helps people grasp onto it, and it helps them comprehend and follow through with the steps. We're like, you're doing the exact same thing, but in your interview.
That makes a lot of sense for sure.
I love it. I love it. I love it. What other questions do you have regarding these 2 interviews? So you have this one later today and you have one tomorrow. Any final last questions?
If I have a final last question, it would be to kind of flip this and go, one of the things I was finding with interviews before I started my contract role was that a lot of the times the fit, it ended up like not quite being right. And I found it out a little bit late. obviously these ones I think I've done better at like kind of vetting that out myself, but I'd love to know from your perspective, any extra questions you think I could ask to just really tease out whether or not this is right for me, because I'm very blessed to be in a situation where if I don't want them, I don't have to take the jobs. So,
sure.
Yeah.
So what questions do you ask in the middle of the process? Tell me, what things did you realize were not a good fit later on? That'll probably help me answer that question.
Yeah, fair. Sometimes it was just like it was the industry, which I mean, can't be helped until you start talking to people.
Sure.
But too, it was like this weird feeling where you're just going, I don't know if I'm going to get along with these people or their processes, or whatever. Sure. And I think what I'm kind of concerned about is trying to understand, those, if you were talking to a friend about their job, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, man, this sucks and I hate this thing. I want to know what those are without asking, what do you hate? Because sure. I just want to so part of it is, about, I'm saying, a lot, I'm getting nervous. Part of it's about team dynamics and understanding that, but I want to see if there's a way to tease out more honesty from the canned responses.
Sure. I think that's a big thing that a lot of people have questions about. So first things first, I think you need to identify what's important to you or what's gone wrong in past teams. So that will help inform what the subject of your question is. So one of the generic ways to ask that is first ask them, what's the number one thing that you love about working on this team? And then the second follow-up question to that is, what are 3 things that you believe the team needs to change in order to be more effective? Yeah. Very specific. You can't give them general. Give me 3 answers. Or what are 3 adjectives that you would use to describe the team? What are 3 adjectives that you would use to describe your manager? And, at the end of the day, they are still performing too, right? So you are only you can only get so much, but that's where you put your kind of spidey sense on, right? And you kind of think, am I hearing any alarm bells? Are there any red flags that are going off? Don't ignore those. A lot of people will ignore those, and you need to become an expert at listening and listening between the lines, right? If something smells fishy, it's probably fishy, right?
That's fair.
And I know it's a little bit harder over video, if you're doing video or over a call, definitely, than it would be in person. Body language is everything. You can tell everything by somebody's body language. But I do still believe that if you're able to ask very specific questions and provide context, it helps ask harder questions without offending someone. So for instance, if you're really trying to, you've been in a situation before where your manager was domineering and micromanager. Let's just use that as an example. It's a common one. In your next, interview, you could say, if you're talking to a manager, I know this is kind of an uncomfortable question, but this is just based off of some experience that I've had with past managers. How would you describe your management style? Would love to hear a little bit more about that, right? Yeah. Like, how would you describe it? Or you could give a situation like, let's say I came to you with this problem. How would you approach that as a manager? Right? It's
behavioral interviewing them back.
Yes, 100%, because you have to be, and to be fair, I've had clients that have asked these questions and the employers actually really love them because they're thoughtful questions, showing like, I want to make sure this is a mutual fit. I want to be excited about working on this team. I'm sure you've been a part of other companies before. There's been organizations that have been really great to work for, and some haven't been. And it's not based off of, individual people. It's just maybe not a great fit. And so I just want to make sure I'm doing my due diligence on my side to ensure that I'm excited and all in on your company.
That's awesome. Yeah. I definitely want to have that feeling where it's just, you believe in the team's mission and whatnot, because sometimes it can get a little muddled. Or you take a job because you're excited about, say, maybe even just your hiring manager or something. And then it turns out you're not there anymore. And then what do you do? So,
right. Yeah. You should never take a job for just one person.
Yeah.
That is a terrible way to choose. If you have the luxury, right? If you have the luxury to be a little bit more selective, I think it's really wise to look at the whole picture. And I also tell people that you should not just the manager, but the whole team. I think a lot of people get misconstrued nowadays because there's all these companies that are spending thousands and thousands of dollars on their employer branding. And it makes like a really cool place to work. And like, we're all about these things, but a lot of that is lip service. And so you really do have to dig, and the overall culture may be different than the subculture. So, I worked for the New York Stock Exchange, and I would say the overall culture was okay, but my team was amazing. I loved working on my team and they were awesome. So, and I still talk to those people. So I would say for you, it's really evaluating what is a priority for you, because it's going to be different than somebody else that's listening to that. understanding what those priorities are and formulating questions surrounding that. That's a really great question.
Yeah, it's something I've definitely learned. It bit me in the butt one time. So
yeah,
learned my lesson, but I'm happy, to kind of be in that state. Like you said, like I have that luxury right now. So I really want to find the right place for me. I'm just very passionate product manager. And I think
yes, you are. You post a lot on LinkedIn, which I love that you do that. I love that you do that. I really encourage people to follow you. Where would be the best place to connect with you if they're listening to this? Would it be on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah. If you want career stuff. Otherwise, it's a lot of photos of my cat on Instagram. And
yeah.
I don't need that.
I love it. I love it. Well, I think you're going to be excellent today. I think that with just a couple of tweaks to your messaging and bringing more structure to your answer, understanding and getting into the mindset of the employer, and then getting rid of the gremlins that are probably in your head. Do those three things. I believe that you're going to have a lot of success in your interviewing.
Thank you. I super appreciate it. It was really great to speak with you and have you call me out on my,
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. Awesome. Guys. Thanks so much for listening this week, and tune in for a couple weeks from now. We're actually doing a whole episode specifically on how to figure out if a company is full of BS or not. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Thanks for listening to the Recruit the Employer podcast. If you've been loving this podcast and it's been helping you approach your career in a brand new way, I have two shameless asks. Number one, make sure you hit subscribe right this very second. That way you won't miss a single episode. And number two, would you give us a review? Reviews help other ambitious career women like you know that this podcast is the place to be and helps the podcast climb to the top of the charts. Think of it as some good career karma. And as always, if you want to learn more about the topics we discussed today or are ready to take massive action and invest in yourself and your career, we would be honored to help you. Head on over to recruittheemployer.com/call to book your free strategy session. Regardless, we will see you next week.